what's up internet? My name is Nikki and today is the first video of 2018 where I'm actually sitting in front of the camera. This is crazy. I think the last time I did a video like this was back in November 2017. That is just like, what do I even do with myself? Like, this is crazy to think about that. It's been 2 months since I've actually sat down and did this one-on-one. So yeah, so for my brief sort of absence, it's due to work because work has been really crazy. You would assume after the holidays it will calm down, but no, it has not calmed down whatsoever. So it's been a go. But I am proud to say that I have actually been reading a lot this year since the beginning of January of 2018. So a pat on the back for me because I've actually been reading a lot of good books. But before I get into any of the readings of 2018 thus far, I have to actually review of 2017 reading year. So to do that, I actually am gonna go through my Goodreads because for most of you, I'm hoping, since you're watching my video, that you know what Goodreads is. It's basically like an app database where it has all these books and you can say you read them or you want to read them and stuff like that. Just tracking your reading habits essentially is what it is. And so let's do a little review of that. So right now I have my handy dandy computer and let's go over it. Okay, so starting off, this is my Goodreads. This basically tracked all the books that I read last year, mostly all the books that were on the database because I have found out that there's a lot of books. Well, I shouldn't say a lot of books. There's a few books that aren't on the system, and when they are, they're not, I guess, the same. I don't know how to really explain it. It kind of goes like for my edition, it's not the same edition on the database, but this is basically everything that I was able to track down of 2017. So this is my year of 2017 in books. So starting off, I actually had a goal of reading 50 books, and I'm actually proud to say that I actually accomplished that. And it says here that I read about 13,278 pages from across 51 books, which I'm really proud of. And yeah, but I kind of feel like I cheated a little bit, but I explain that a little bit more as I keep going. Also, this picture over here with all these books, these look really cool. I like these. Is it weird that I want these books even though they're not real? Well, I don't know if they're not real. Maybe they are. Maybe it's from someone else's bookshelf or something, but those books look really cool. Moving on, it's according to Goodreads, it's the shortest book I read was 24 pages, and that's from Green Buffalo Season by C.S. Pacat. This is actually a short story based off the Captive Prince trilogy by C.S. Pacat, which I loved a lot. Granted, I did love their book than I did the first two, and also I enjoyed highly the other 3 short stories that she came up with, but this one was really good. I really enjoyed it. For most of you who might not know what the Captive Prince trilogy is by C.S. Pacat, the story follows a prince who ends up getting kidnapped from his own kingdom and sold off to their neighboring kingdom that they have been in war with. Well, I shouldn't say war, because in the beginning of the story they were actually at peace. They have a treaty to not cross lines and boundaries and stuff like that, but he gets sold off to the neighboring kingdom, and they assume he's actually a sex slave. And so he gets sold off to the neighboring kingdom to be a present to their future king. And it just gets a little weird because the future king knows who he is and basically taunts him through the whole thing just to submit to him. And it's just a really long story of issues that they both have against each other due to family stuff and also due to, country stuff, because they are both future kings. Granted, one of them is more closer to the throne than the other one is. But still, it is a really interesting, I guess, romantic adventure story. I do admit it is very, very violent, but it is really sweet at times. So I really highly enjoyed it. If you're into like medieval Roman sort of times, that's kind of how I saw it, but who knows. And also, I have just heard that she actually came out a manga due to this whole thing, which I'm like, I kind of want to get my hands on, but then again, I'm like, do I really want to see the graphics of it? I don't know, but it seemed really cool. Moving on to the longest book, which was roughly 1,000 pages long, is It by Stephen King, and I remember reading this so vividly due to the fact that it took me roughly a month to finish it, and that's because I really wanted to finish this book because I wanted to reread it so I could go see the new movie and do a movie versus book review, which I did. I vlogged like the couple pages that I was reading from it because I ended up finishing the book and I ended up going to go see the new one, and I actually ended up re-watching the original movie, and just that day, just seeing the comparisons between then and now, it's just really weird, and I really enjoyed it a lot. So for most of you who might not know what it is by Stephen King, one, I will be very surprised, but the story follows a bunch of kids who end up fighting back against the monster who lives under their city in the sewers, and the story kind of revolves around them trying to deal with this monster who's trying to basically kill them. And the story follows them as they grow up, and then they start to forget what this monster is until one day the monster resurfaces and starts all over again, and they come back to their hometown to stop it for once and for all. And it's really a good book if you like the whole adventure thing, or you're just a really big Stephen King fan. It's a great read. Granted, it is a hunker of a book. I actually got to the point where I actually started audiobooking it just because of how long it was. My wrist actually started hurting, but I do not regret it whatsoever because I ended up coloring halfway through most of the audiobook, which I was fine with. So moving on, it tells me my average length of a book was 260 pages, which I kind of see because I think most of my books weren't that long, but yeah, roughly 300 pages I remember most of my books were. So the most popular book I ended up reading is It by Stephen King, which I kind of see why, because the movie came out last year and I'm pretty sure a lot of people wanted to reread the book or just read the book in general before they saw the movie. I like doing that just mainly because once I watch a movie and find out it's based on a book, I like kind of knowing more about the characters and certain things that happened in the movie, because there's so much you can put in a movie to explain how a character feels, because the only thing actors can go by is face, like facial and emotional ways they talk or their body language and stuff, but in a book you get like their whole thought process and how certain things happen, and I kind of like knowing a little bit more of the depth of the characters. Moving on to the least popular book I ended up reading is Starfighter Chapter 4 by Hamlet Machine. And I can understand this, why it's least popular, just because it was a fairly recent new release, and also the fact that it's a web series that is ongoing on Hamlet Machine's website, which is really excruciating to think about because it's taking forever to get new updates, but still I'm not complaining that much to the fact because I understand how long it takes for someone to draw something and then try to put the dialogue in certain aspects of it, but it's still the pain because we're currently in an emotional state of mind between what will happen between Abel and Cain. So this storyline kind of reminds me sort of like Romeo and Juliet meets Ender's Game. It is a sci-fi futuristic kind of story. It kind of revolves around Abel and Cain, who are starfighters. Abel is a navigator who pilots a starfighter, and Cain is a fighter who basically protects the ship. So basically he's shooting at stuff. That's his main goal as the war. I don't know what it's called, but that's basically all I don't know what he is. He's the gunman. And Cain and Abel are from two different forms of society. Abel is an aristocrat who is basically a rich kid who always wanted to prove to himself to his father, and Cain is basically a kid from the slums who had no choice but to join the Starfighter's crew, not unless he wanted basically to live in the slums for the rest of his life. And it kind of shows them and their really interesting adventure of trying to destroy aliens. And so far that we know is that they're in love, sort of, I think. I'm not sure. But it's really getting really intense, and I suggest it if you're into that stuff. I do admit that the rating is 18 and above, so be warned about explicit sexual detail. Moving on to... So it says my average rating for 2017 is 4.5, which I can understand because I really did enjoy a lot of the books I read. Moving on to the highest rated book on Goodreads is The Kingsman by Nora Sakavic, and I'm very happy to hear about this due to the fact that I love The Kingsman so much. This book I ended up reading 3 times just because of how much I enjoyed it last year. It was my favorite book of 2017. This is the 3rd book in All for the Game trilogy by Nora Sakavic. The story revolves around Neil Johnson, who is on a run from his abusive father, and due to certain events that take place in book 1, he kind of is starting to give up on life and he doesn't care anymore, and the only thing he wants to do is play his favorite sport, which is Exy, which is EXY. I think that's how you pronounce it, Exy. I'm not 100% sure. Anyways, it's a fictional game that combines lacrosse and hockey together in a very, very violent way, and it's a really good, enjoyable book. I do admit, when I started reading this book, it kind of reminded me of a sports anime, and I just fell in love with it a lot. So all the characters that Neil Johnson comes across, he finds out that this whole team is formed of misfits of all different walks of life, that they all have been through a lot of stuff in their life, and the only thing that gets them going is playing this sport. So while Neil Johnson is thinking about probably running away from them, he can't actually let it go to the fact that he has never actually had a real family until he met his team. And so this is the journey between Neil Johnson trying to protect the only thing that makes him happy, and also basically trying to confront his biggest fear, and that is his father. So these are all the books I ended up reading, and I do have to admit that I feel like I kind of cheated to the fact because I ended up reading a lot of comic books, especially Deadly Class, which is one of my favorite series of all time. But overall, I guess sort of I didn't really cheat, because now looking at it, I read a lot of books. Granted, they weren't like as big as it, but still. I still feel like kind of cheated due to how many comic books I ended up reading, but hey, it's still a book, right? So that is it for my 2017 review. If you read any of these books or you end up picking up any of these books, tell me. I would like to know what your opinions are, because granted, I might love them, you might think something else of it, but I do highly recommend All for the Game by Nora Sakavic, because holy moly, that series got me good and I love it so much. Love it so much. So yeah, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, please subscribe. If not, that's cool. I usually try to upload either Monday, Wednesdays, or Fridays. So yeah, I catch you later. Well, bye.